is space. Now, in space, as I said, all the five elements, whether it is our Upanishads or Vedas or so on, we have to not abuse them. Worshipping the five elements means keeping them clean and not abusing them. It's not just worshipping them as a personality in the temple, but also worshipping them in real life. And everybody has to participate. Every individual, every company, the government, everybody is involved in this process. So even space, we are putting 600 satellites per year. There is a lot of debris being collected in space. There is a company which European Space Agency has contracted with, thankfully. It is called Clean Space. Clean Space, in 2025, they intend to send like a giant rocket vacuum cleaner, which will clear out the debris from space. Good initiative. There is another company called Planet.com. Planet.com is a company using satellite technology. They can tell you before, during, and after disaster, what actions need to be taken, real time, what is happening. So disaster relief efforts can be speeded up, and a lot of things could be done. So good day, everybody. And thank you again to Sangam Talks, and namaste, everyone. This is a continuation of part two, but quickly to summarize in a nutshell, part one of my talk was focused on how to get down the ladder of a linear economy, and then how to simultaneously climb a different ladder on building a circular economy in India as well as the world, because we are going through climate change. We are going through so many problems, linear economy with fossil fuels, plastics, coal, cement, steel, everything. We know where it has taken us. So that model does not work anymore moving forward into the future. So that's why I first focus. So the way I address it is to focus on our five elements, or the Panchabhutas or Panchatatvas, which were basically water, air, soil, energy, which is fire, and space. As far as water innovations are concerned, the last time I spoke about several innovations, and one of them was a brand new innovation on how to create a completely new laundromat industry with liquid carbon dioxide, which will save at least 4 to 5 billion gallons of water per day and employ at least 5 to 6% of the entire Indian population. And like that, there were many other innovations which will save a lot of water and increase employment. But you can hear that in part one. So now in part two, what I would like to do is to focus on soil. I'll first start with soil, and then soil will have some overlaps with air and water also. And then I'll focus on energy, and finally end with space. So as far as soil is concerned, what is the significance of soil? The significance of soil is Mother Earth. It is Prithvi. We worship it. We worship, almost all cultures in some shape or form worship Mother Earth. And soil holds all terrestrial life, whether it is animal, human, plants, and they're responsible for plant growth, yield stability, nutrition. They hold biodiversity both inside the ground and above the ground. As a matter of fact, there is more diversity inside the ground than even above the ground. So if you take 1 teaspoon of soil, it will contain 100 million to 1 billion microbes. That's a lot of microbes. E.O. Wilson, the famous biologist, said that these are the little things that run the world. As a matter of fact, even in a human being, it is the little things that run the world. We also have microbes. Our gut is filled with so many microbes. Our mouth has so many microbes. So they are the ones actually doing the job. And soil is very important because it's a carbon sink. Uh, it helps carbon sequestration. It's one of the greatest carbon sinks along with plants and with the oceans. And there are just so many things with the soil that we do not really understand. Now, Professor Ratan Lal, who won the Padma Shri in 2021 and the World Food Prize in 2020, which is equal to the Nobel Prize in Agriculture, he's called the godfather of soil. And he defines the ideal soil as having 45% inorganic, 3 to 5% organic matter, 25% water, and 25% air. So once these proportions are changed, then obviously there are imbalances in the soil. And according to him, you should have at least 2% soil organic matter, sometimes termed as SOM, or soil or organic carbon, SOC, which both mean exactly the same thing. So that is the ideal soil. Now, what is happening in India? In India, according to the EcoScience Research Foundation, the soil organic matter is only 0.40%. So that's not good because according to Sadhguru, when he went to a United Nations conference recently, they asked him, what are the 3 ecological initiatives for India? And he said, soil, soil, and soil. And he said 60% of India's soil is in a distressed state. And he gave it like, in 25 years, we have to fix this soil. Otherwise, it's not going to be good. Civilizations have vanished because they did not take care of their soil. Whether it is Mesopotamia, Mohenjo-daro, Inca civilization, even the recent crisis in Syria, many researchers have traced it to soil. Because if you know, the protest actually started because of a severe drought in Syria, and then it bubbled up and morphed into different things, but the root cause was not taking care of the soil. So soil is one of the most fundamental thing. I think it is the lowest common denominator, in my opinion, not only for our national security, but even for any future economic growth. So if you don't address soil, you're already building castles on thin ice. So that is how important soil is. Now, you may ask me, well, why did we get to this place where soil organic content is only 0.40% when it should be at least 2%? The reason is because we adopted a lot of industrial farming, a lot of chemical farming, a lot of pesticide use, all non-organic methods in the quest for yield. And we forgot what circular economy actually means. So these are the things that have led to the erosion of soil, waterlogging, water erosion, not addressing the health of the soil. If you destroy the microbes in the soil, you destroy the soil. Basically, the organic content is lost. So bottom line, the equation is soil organic matter should be ideal. And once that is ideal, then your microbial health is ideal. And microbial health becomes ideal when your crop diversity is there. So you should have different kinds of crops. And that leads to healthier plant life. And healthier plant life ultimately leads to good human health. So they are all related. They're all related. So even if you see in humans, as long as we eat a diverse kind of food, we had a fruitarian culture in India which changed. When you eat a variety of fruits and vegetables and things like that, your microbes in the gut also are very healthy. In fact, medicine is now evolving towards examining gut microbes and how they contribute to our health. So those are the basic things that we need to remember. So you will ask me, what is the government actually doing about this? So I think, since the last 6 years, there has been a recognition that we have to do something. It's not that the government is not aware of these things. I think everybody in India is fully aware of it. And the soil health card initiative had started. Basically, farmers test their soil, get results from the national laboratory, and tools and resources are provided to improve the soil. There are many, many emerging trends that are happening in terms of organic farming. In fact, unofficially, if you look at it, India has the largest number of organic farmers compared to anywhere else in the world. The data points are not actually captured because of the organic certification process, which is very, very cumbersome. But we'll kind of get into that later. So there are positive trends which are emerging, but we need to continue those positive trends. So my whole talk is about identifying the problem a little bit, but giving and offering more solutions and more entrepreneurial ideas, because I believe private enterprise and private entrepreneurs can exactly change and shape India and shape the world also. So I will start with my first innovation. Professor Ratan Lal, godfather of soil, and several other environmentalists in India have said that brick manufacturing with brick kilns, they use a lot of topsoil in India. And what they're doing is, burning up this topsoil at 2000 degrees to make bricks. And this is not sustainable. In fact, people have said they should stop. But in a democratic society and a free market society, nobody is going to stop. So what should you do? You have to develop competitive forces, and entrepreneurs have to jump in to address this problem. So there is one company called Biomason, Biomason. You can look them up on the internet. What they are doing is they are growing bricks in a laboratory. Basically, they take loose sand from the beaches, and there is a lot of sand, whether it's the Rajasthan desert or our beaches, and they use bacteria. And these bacteria are not even modified. They are naturally occurring bacteria in the soil. And after hundreds of experiments, this company has found out that at room temperature, at completely room temperature, they're able to manufacture these bricks in 4 days, which takes more than 100 years to do it. So you can look them up. That is one idea. So they manufacture cement too, by the way. So this is a circular economy concept, and it will save a lot of our topsoil in India. The other website I would recommend to you is called Thannal.com, Thannal, and they use a lot of cow dung related materials and a lot of other indigenous materials to make natural home products. You can look at that. There are companies which are making Vedic plaster, Vedic paint. They are all helpful building materials which can really help alleviate the situation. Shigeru Ban in Japan is making recycled paper tubes. And with these recycled paper tubes, he has constructed commercial buildings, offices. You can make them even fire resistant. And he supplies these to disaster areas, areas to the United Nations. And each shelter costs between $100 to $200. And I think it is reasonable. And you can go into his website and look at it. So there are several ideas. And one more idea I would mention is our ancient tradition of Vastuvidya or Sthapatya Veda. You can go and look and research what kind of materials are available. There is a person by name Anil Netrawali who has written a lot of books on green composites or biocomposites. And they're all plant-based materials. how can you use the green composite technology or biocomposite technology to build bricks, to build houses? We have not even explored that. For 75 years, we cannot be continuing to use topsoil and eroding the soil of India. The second innovation I would like to discuss as far as soil is concerned is wastewater recycling. Wastewater recycling can do a lot of good. There is a lot of wealth in our wastewater. And by reclaiming this wastewater, we can actually improve our soil and also recharge our groundwater. Let me give you an example first. What does success look like? There is Shafdan, Shafdan, wastewater recycling plant in Israel, and they are reusing 90% of the wastewater. So imagine Israel and India got independence at the same time, and they have converted their deserts into a fertile land, and 90% of their wastewater is reused primarily for agriculture and irrigation purposes, as well as recharging groundwater levels. The United Nations has called it the best model in the world, something that we need to look at, because if we compare India to Israel, in India, according to Down to Earth magazine as well as TERI, about 30% of India's wastewater is treated, not reused. It is treated, but only 7% is reused. And what happens to the rest? Polluting our rivers and polluting our oceans. So we can do so much with this wastewater. We can, we should have a model, something like Israel, and basically enrich our lands, enrich the Rajasthan desert, and even use it to enrich the deserts of the Middle East and so on, use it as an export. Now, this is a state level initiative, wastewater, right? So the states have to take a leadership, in my opinion, to privatize this. Give it to entrepreneurs, let them run with it, and let them make money and do a circular economy. Now, one of the things I would like to point out in wastewater is, as long as we are sending just organic waste into the water, it is helpful. Because if you send inorganic waste into our water systems like plastics and chemicals and all that, then again, you will be polluting the fields. So we need to have a system where we convert all our plastics into bioplastics. It can be done today. For example, there is a company called BOSK Bioproducts, and they are telling the people, look, you don't have to change any of your plastic manufacturing facilities. You can do bioplastic in the exact same manufacturing facility. So it's not disrupting your existing business. You still can manufacture bioplastics by using wood, straw, biomass, and things like that. And so look at BOSK Bioproducts. Similarly, all chemicals shift towards bio-based chemicals. For example, there is a company called CH Bioforce, and there is another company called DMC Bioproducts. Go into their website and see what exactly they are doing. How are they manufacturing bio-based products? There are hundreds of companies making cleaning agents, whether with algal oil, saw oil, or as I said last time, lemongrass oil. Many companies are there. So this is where we need to evolve and move towards. The opportunity is just immense. You may think that, there was a person, I just want to digress a little bit. There was a person in Africa in the 1940s, 1950s. He ordered the killing of several thousands of elephants because he thought they were causing drought in one of this African country. The same person today had like a Valmiki movement, and basically he said, oh my God, what did I do? ordering the killing of the elephants, thinking they're causing drought, he realized that the deserts can actually be converted into forests when you introduce animals. Because when the animals walk on their own excreta, they actually turn the desert into a fertile land. So you get my point on wastewater as well. The third innovation that I would like to address is basically how we can kind of minimize the land use or use some existing land for agroforestry kind of projects. So let me give you an example. Coffee in India is grown on 500,000 hectares of land. And it is all grown on hilly slopes, and it requires a lot of water. So 1 cup of coffee, to make 1 cup of coffee, it actually requires 140 liters of water. That is the global footprint of water. And according to many climate scientists, in the next few years, within the next 5 to 6 to 10 years, 50% of the coffee plantations are at very high risk with global warming. And so we need to think of alternatives too, right? One of the alternative is there is a company called VTT Technical Institute, Technical Research Institute. It's in Finland, and they are growing coffee in a lab. And how are they doing it? They take the cell line from a coffee leaf, coffee plant leaf or a stem, and they grow it in bioreactors. And then they dry it up and they make coffee out of that. And they have tested this with consumers. The consumers could not tell the difference between lab-grown coffee versus the real coffee. So this is a decentralized industry. Many people can get into it, and whatever coffee they get, they can give it to some contract manufacturing facility who can manufacture it and so on. So lot of opportunity. And if we start on this right now, at least we can grow more forests on our hilly slopes and even fix the environment and the weather patterns of India. Like this, last time I also told another company called Gally, G-A-L-Y, which grows cotton in a lab. And they are going to produce, they are Boston-based, and their cotton is going to come out of their lab starting next year. There are other approaches. For example, many other things also are being looked at. The other idea that I would like to mention is vertical farming. If 10 to 20% of the rural agriculture move to the urban areas, for example, you can have green leafy vegetables, all green leafy stuff, cucumbers, tomatoes, and so on, in vertical farms. Like Urban Kisan in India is a big thing. They have already gone into vertical farming. Aero Farms in New Jersey is one of the biggest vertical farms. So you can look at all of these things and see how we can shift some things, because the water footprint will be very low in vertical farms. The sugarcane industry in India also consumes a lot of water, right? But people need alternatives because there are different segments of the market. For example, there is the stevia plant, 95% less water footprint. And even in the United States, the Food and Drug Administration has approved stevia, which is basically 200 to 300 times more sweeter than sugar itself. So you just need a pinch of it rather than a full teaspoon to put in your coffee or tea. And it is very good for diabetics, very good for weight loss. It has a lot more antioxidants in it. Something that India needs to look into to cater to the different market and to the different needs of the people. So all of these alternatives are not only good, but they provide a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities as well. So let me shift to the next innovation that I would like to discuss. Now, you may consider it a little controversial, but in fact, if you think of it, it is not. The facts are important, and many, many people all over the world are not aware of this. Now, let me put this in the Indian context. In India, what is happening is this is about meat that is grown for food. Whether it is chicken, beef, lamb, pork, whatever it is, um, I'm talking about livestock in general. So in India, 512 million livestock. We have 512 million livestock in 12 million hectares of land. And this is according to Yashika Kapoor, who wrote an article called How India's Meat Industry is Impacting the Environment. This was published in Indian Bioscience in October 2019. So if you take 512 million livestock divided by 12 million hectares of land, you get 42, right? So you have 42 livestock per hectare. And do you know what the Food and Agricultural Organization recommends? Only 5 livestock should be there per hectare. So what is happening in India is too much of overgrazing, and that is destroying our land and our soil. That's why you see the organic content is so low. According to Professor Ratan Lal, even in Punjab, Haryana, and MP, it is as low as 0.10 to 0.20 soil organic matter or soil organic content, carbon. So these are the things that we need to be aware of. I will give you the solution in a minute, but I want to tell you the problem. So if you look at it globally, according to globalagriculture.org, 60% of the world's agricultural land is used for beef production, and it accounts for less than 2% of our calories. That's all. But yet 60% of that agricultural land is being used. Not to talk about for beef production, the amount of water that is used, 15,500 liters per kilogram of beef. And depending upon which statistic you're looking at, it is 7 kilograms of animal feed or 25 kilograms of animal feed, which is basically all plant material. So when so much of the plant residue could have been taken up by the soil, it's now being fed to our cattle, because India is also exporting Kara beef, which is water buffalo beef, for $3.2 billion or 1.2 million tons. So this is degrading our soil. And according to many experts, this is unsustainable. So somewhere something will happen, and we can address this problem right now, right today. And what I am suggesting is that let us look at a company. There are at least 40 different companies, either doing plant-based substitutes, or they are engaging in producing meat in a lab. So there are many, many alternatives that you could look at, actually. For example, for all the people who are consuming meat, I think they are aware of the environmental problems. They are also maybe aware of the human anatomical problems, because if you look at our human anatomy, it is basically plant-based. I'll give you one article called Humans Are Naturally Plant Eaters, in-depth article by Michael Bluejay. It shows you on every aspect, based upon all scientific evidence, human anatomy is only plant-based. As a matter of fact, why talk about something that has come out in the Western side? More than 100 years ago, or even prior to that, our saints and seers have spoken about it. Swami Shri Yukteswar, the great guru of Shri Paramahansa Yogananda, in his book called The Holy Science, gave accurate measurements on the length of the digestive canal in herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, or frugivores. How does the length of the digestive canal compare to the human body? These ratios have been given way back. And I know that inspiration has been taken by several scientists to look into this. He gave the size of the stomach, how the teeth, everything looked like. So the point I'm trying to make is there needs to be a lot of education on environment as well as how human anatomy is. And this is not taught in our school textbooks. Even physicians are not aware of this. Physicians are not even aware that meat that is produced for food has more pesticide content than even the vegetables in India. So even colon cancer rates are higher in people who are consuming non-veg versus those who eat only vegetarian, as well as many other health-related aspects. It's not that I'm trying to advocate so much or change the habits. I think from environmental and anatomical habits, yeah, it is a good thing to gravitate towards that, but habits don't change suddenly, right? They can be minimized. So we need to give people who want alternatives, we need to give them alternatives like meatless meat, like Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat in United States. When they came out with these substitutes, which taste exactly like meat, it flew off. I mean, all these McDonald's and things like that, it has just taken off because there is a segment of the market who's aware of environmental problems, but they're saying, give us some alternatives. So this is a very good alternative. There are 10 startups in India which are already doing meatless meat, which means plant that tastes like meat. But there will always be a segment of the people who want the real meat. They don't want a plant-based. So for those people, I am suggesting, why don't you look at this company called Future Meat Technologies based out of Israel. They are manufacturing 500 kilograms of meat grown in a lab per day. It uses 99% less land, 96% less water, 80% less carbon dioxide emissions, and the nutritional value is 100% similar to the real thing. So in fact, they are starting a manufacturing plant in United States. Singapore has already approved lab-based meat for human consumption. Indian government has been working on lab-based meat, but I don't know where they stand. So these are all very important things. In fact, the United Nations IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, has declared that meat grown for food emits more greenhouse gases than all of the vehicles combined all over the world. So I want you to leave you with that thought. India has great opportunity to jump into this and capture the export market. It's very easy. You can do on organic meat, with cell lines. You have no E. coli, no pesticide, no nothing. And this will be more of a greater opportunity for India to get into these kinds of businesses. I have several other things that I would like to mention is several innovations are happening in the area of soil. I just want to touch on a few in India itself. So one of the best examples I can give you is what is called as CMNF, Community Managed Natural Farming, and is happening in Andhra Pradesh. You can look it up on the website, type in AP space CMNF, and they are showing some very good results with organic farming. And they have an annual report also. And 8 million hectares of land is coming under CMNF. And they are also practicing what is called CMSA, which is Community Managed Sustainable Agriculture, with a lot of indigenous knowledge and indigenous technology that will help other states. There are positive developments happening in India where Gujarat has opened the first organic agricultural university. Karnataka has followed. And hopefully, if these trends continue, we can fix our soil within the next 5 to 10 years, so that we don't have to wait for a crisis. We can actually do this. I also have to mention that if we free up more land, whether it is meat or coffee or cotton or sugarcane or whatever, and we develop more agroforestry projects, and states have to take the leadership and initiative. I would like you to look at two books. Professor Nandita Krishna has written a book called Sacred Plants of India and Sacred Animals of India, along with Amrita Lingam. And these sacred plants of India are going extinct. The sacred animals are going extinct. I mean, we have lost more than a half of the biodiversity of this earth, according to E.O. Wilson. So we need to revive all these things, and we can do it in an organic basis. And we can grow sacred plants. So if every state were to identify whether it is working with farmers or reclaiming certain lands and growing these forests, we could not only change our climate, our soil, but even the quality of our air could be changed. So a lot of things can be done. In fact, let me give you the example of one entrepreneur called Naveen Sikka, who started the company called Terviva in Florida. And what did he do? He imported Pongamia trees from India, which are ancient trees, 5,000 years old, so rich trees, and they grow on degraded land, and they give you a lot of vegetable protein, vegetable oil, biofertilizer, everything. And he has a tie-up with many companies to give these products. So agroforestry can make you so much money also. I mean, even 4 to 5 times to 6 times more money. Ours was a fruitarian culture. We need to get back to a fruitarian culture. And if we address the demand side of the equation, if consumers demand it, then the farmers will also kind of work towards that. In Andhra Pradesh, look at Dr. Kader Wali. He is actually promoting millets, the 5 types of millets. He calls it Shridanya. And they don't require much water. They are helpful for human beings. They are doing a good work for the soil also. So there are just a lot of practices happening within India. Somebody could just start a YouTube channel or a podcast just focusing on soil and showcasing the heroes who are in India, the unsung heroes. Our media just projects so much on politics or celebrities. Why not talk about the soil heroes? So, for example, in Rajasthan, Project Dhun, DHU and Project Dhun, this person, along with a team, they took over or adopted 500 acres of barren land, and they converted it into a beautiful sanctuary of forest. Now you can see a lot of hummingbirds and a lot of wildlife coming back in there. Go look up in the YouTube. We need to showcase such cases on the television, and we give it less attention than what is actually required. Now, let me give you examples from outside of the country, outside of India also. So, for example, we have the Soil Health Card Initiative in India, right? Is there a way that we can complement the Soil Health Card Initiative with some ideas happening overseas? For example, in China, the farmers have a commercially available soil test strip, and they use it with a mobile app. And they know immediately what their soil health is, and they can take the appropriate actions. There is a company called Trace Genomics in the United States. What they do is just like a blood report or a DNA test. They can tell you exactly what kind of microbes are in your soil, which are beneficial, which are harmful, so that appropriate steps could be taken. So look at this company. There is a soil carbon company in Australia, Indigo AG in United States. Everybody is focused on microbial health for the soil. What are they doing? Then there is a company called Microgen Biotech in Ireland, and their primary market is entire China. What are they doing? They are reviving the soil where it is contaminated with heavy metals in China. That is their specialty. Many ideas are out there that entrepreneurs can look into and try to emulate these particular ideas. Land Life Company in United States, they have created a bio-based product. So if you are on the highways of India or the roads of India, you can use this bio-based product and you can plant trees, and it requires very, very minimal irrigation. So number of ideas of this nature exist. You might want to know that Cleopatra used soil to maintain her beauty, and the whole field was called pelotherapy, using medicinal clays. We have nature clinics in India. Why not use the soil as a way to treat different diseases in India? We have not looked into that. We have not looked into Vriksha Ayurveda. There is just so much opportunity going on. So there are a lot of individual people in India who are doing all this, but we are not showcasing them. And hopefully, if their stories come out into the open, we will have a lot more things going on. So I think I'll stop with soil because I just have another 10 minutes or so to finish with air and energy and space. As far as air, I told you a lot about forests. Look at the example of Costa Rica. Costa Rica in the 1940s, right? 75% of their country had forest. What happened by 1980? The forest cover went down from 75 to 25%, right? And the new leadership came and they took it as a mission, and they said, things have to change. And things did change. And today, 65% of Costa Rica is back to a forest cover, and 100% of Costa Rica is completely run on renewable energy. So an example that we could look into. So individual states have to take leadership, but people have to demand it. People have to focus on this thing. Like, for example, I was talking about wastewater. Is it on top of the mind? No, not in anybody's mind. So unless these initiatives are taken, things won't change. The other thing on air, look at a company called Boston Metal. Boston Metal manufactures steel without emitting any carbon dioxide, no carbon dioxide emission, and yet they are able to make steel. Why couldn't our steel industry look at companies like this and look at what practices are being adopted? So in my opinion, corporate social responsibility is not about just giving 2% of your money as charity, but rather saying, how can I convert my existing processes to a circular economy so that I do not create any waste at all? I do not pollute my water, I do not pollute my air or anything. So this is the way we can become a much more holistic and organic society. And I've told you already how everything is kind of interconnected here. Let me talk about fire. When I talk about fire, it means energy, right? Energy. So I think many people are already familiar with solar, wind, and so on. But what I want to talk about is a business concept. The business concept is, and I may be totally wrong on this because I'm not a technical expert, but I just want to throw it out as food for thought or as an idea. What if we imported old cruise ships, which we already do, but dismantle them and sell it for their metal? But let us line up India's coastline with old cruise ships and install windmills on all these cruise ships, turn the inside of the cruise ship into a desalination water plant, and outside of the cruise ship, layer it with organic photovoltaics. What do I mean by organic photovoltaics? Unlike traditional photovoltaics, organic photovoltaics use plant metabolites. So it's like the leaf of a plant trying to convert into carbon and so on, right? Photosynthesis. So, so organic photovoltaics will convert sunlight into electricity. And there is a company called Flask, Flask in Japan, which manufactures flexible organic photovoltaics, but there are many other companies in the same business. And India needs to transition to that. The reason is because traditional photovoltaics, you basically have to demanufacture, meaning or take out all the precious metals, the rare minerals from traditional voltaics. So that is a process. So shifting to organic photovoltaics is a good thing. So if we have wind-based energy on the coastline cities and interior of India, we focus on small modular reactors like nuclear. The technology has evolved so much that nuclear is considered safe today. And most of France, if you see, is run on nuclear energy to begin with. And also solar. So we have solar and all of these things inside the country, which will be very useful. Talking about energy itself, I want you to look at one company called Emrod, EMROD, based in New Zealand. Starting next year, they will be transmitting electricity from any power producing company without wires, no wires. It is wireless electricity. Think of it like your Wi-Fi, right? And it has been accepted as internationally safe because it is non-ionized technology. So something to look at. Because of our rural areas, we are thinking of powering them instead of building all these big electrical grids and all that. How will this technology change? See, wireless electricity, it is felt that in the future, they will start powering your cars, they'll start powering your airplanes, ships, and so on. So something that India can look at. So these are some concepts I wanted to put forward, but India has the Solar Alliance. Obviously, they are way ahead in this game. The last thing I would like to focus on is space. Now, in space, as I said, all the 5 elements, whether it is our Upanishads or Vedas or so on, we have to not abuse them. Worshipping the 5 elements means keeping them clean and not abusing them. It's not just worshipping them as a personality in the temple, but also worshipping them in real life. And everybody has to participate. Every individual, every company, the government, everybody is involved in this process. So even space, we are putting 600 satellites per year. There is a lot of debris being collected in space. There is a company which European Space Agency has contracted with, thankfully. It is called Clean Space. Clean Space, in 2025, they intend to send like a giant rocket vacuum cleaner, which will clear out the debris from space. Good initiative. There is another company called Planet.com. Planet.com is a company using satellite technology. They can tell you before, during, and after disaster, what actions need to be taken, real time, what is happening. So disaster relief efforts can be speeded up and a lot of things could be done. So use space for helping humanity, but also don't put junk in space. And these initiatives are kind of good and encouraging. So I would like to conclude this talk by saying that, linear economic model, which is still being taught in our universities and schools, I think we need to teach circular economy concepts. And Scandinavian countries have already providing degrees in this area. We need to change the school education system, focusing on true climate science concept, true biological concepts, and how everything relates to the environment. All these concepts are not being taught in schools. What I've said here, I don't think any one of us have learned it in school. And we need to climb down the ladder of a linear economic model because we know it is not working. And we need to climb up the ladder on a circular economic model. Now, there is one website I would like to leave as, I came across this website very recently, and it is called START, START, US insights.com. And it gives you a database or a complete ecosystem of more than 2 million startups, spread all across the world. And believe it or not, it is a lot of these startups that are changing the world because they are driven by an ambition. Some of these startups are driven by an ambition to address climate change issues. So there is a consciousness, not just in India, but all over the world to address climate change issues. So let us be open. Let us use our Eastern wisdom and Indic thought to look at whatever we have within India, our own wisdom through our ancient sciences, and marry them with whatever new developments which are fitting within the framework of a circular and a cultural economy, and apply this to India. We don't have much time. We have to be running at 100 miles per hour to make these things happen. Because as I said, even Sadhguru said, if you don't address soil in 25 years, we are in for trouble. So these were his words. And I would like to end with that and take any questions. Thank you all so much for listening.
My question, sir, is actually very practical. You have given very, very good ideas. Some of it is being worked on successfully in the US, in other countries. And you have naturally given us a sort of a way ahead in what we can do in India, but there has to be political will, of course, like you said. How can we make this actionable practically, given that we have a large population, a very large young population? What would these kind of innovative solutions, what would their impact be on livelihood? How would it affect, for example, if we go from a certain kind of cropping or farming and move to another kind, how does it impact the livelihood of those people involved in all the areas that you mentioned? If you could please throw some light on that.
So one of the things I would like to mention is, as far as livelihood is concerned, so look at Andhra Pradesh CMNF model, which is community managed natural farming. They're already showing success in this area, right? And it is all voluntary farmers coming. And believe it or not, most of these farmers are actually women farmers who are taking the initiative. We always think of farmer in India as being male, but it is actually female who are more in this particular sector and who are driving this particular change. So the impact on livelihood is positive. The other example I can give you is, we have an example in India with Sikkim. Sikkim was the first state in the world to become completely organic. Yes, they do have teething problems. You can study the case on the internet. They had some teething problems, but at the end, people are happier. The other example I'll give you is, there is a lady called Daphne Miller. Daphne Miller is a physician in the United States, and she has done a lot of research. She has a YouTube called Soil Health and Human Health. As far as livelihood is concerned, her research shows that the suicide rates actually is the lowest when farmers have switched to organic farming, and the suicide rate is highest in the chemical farming kind of a concept. So you right there, you see some proof. As well as livelihood is concerned, you see a lot of human health, because even in India, we have iron deficiency, zinc deficiency, stunted growth. Many things can be related to soil. So many examples are there on human health aspect as to how it improves human health. because it is ultimately it is nutrition per acre, not yield per acre, that we should focus on. And only organic farming is able to do those kind of things. And we have to have a farmer-centric approach in India, because plants and soil are very individualized. They need very personal attentions. You just cannot have this mass scale, one size fits all policy, which never works. I don't know if that answers your question, Deepanjali.
Yeah, my concern was more, I'm aware of the success in Sikkim, as you mentioned, that certain regions, and Sikkim is the only state, I think, in India which has gone as a full state for organic farming. But if you look at, large farm holdings of these very, very agrarian states who have very organized and militant, in a sense, sort of militant farmer unions and things like what we are seeing, in the recent past. This sort of a behavioral change, much as we all know it's ideal, it has to happen. Do you really think it's going to happen? I mean, I want it to happen. I mean, we are on the same page here. But do you think it's really feasible in a country that's so politically sort of, labile, like in a sense? That is one question. Also, sir, when you are just concluding, please could you repeat the name of the website that you last mentioned? I did note it down, that www.us-insights.com. Please could you also clarify?
Oh, yeah. It is called START, STARTUS -insights.com. And this is an ecosystem of 2.1 million startup companies spread all over the world. And there is a subscription that is required for this. I mean, most of my companies that I mentioned, it was all done through painstaking independent research. I don't have access to any of these databases. There is another database called crunchbase.com, but you can look at this as well. But addressing your point, Deepanjali, is there needs to be not only political will, but the mindset has to change. And I'll tell you one thing. So in India, right, most of the parents, they are very risk averse when it comes to their children. They don't want to take, risk of their children entering some other field. For example, I know many people, my friends and their children, they graduate in something, but they're doing something else. Whether it is a certificate program on a specialized area, you can just educate yourself. A lot of it should be self-driven, and a lot of entrepreneurship needs to develop. So I agree with you, Deepanjali. It is a mindset change, and mindset change can only improve if collectively as a nation and as individuals, the media, the social media and everything, we are constantly evolving. So it's a process of evolution. I agree, but a lot needs to be done. I agree with you.
Ramji, I think what Deepanjali was referring to is the farm laws agitation and whatever happened, and the kind of militant activity that I'm sure you must be knowing about, the whole controversy of the farm laws that was, and the so-called farmers agitation. So in such a scenario, what do you think? Because they were repealed.
I understand that they were repealed. I don't have an intimate knowledge. I confess I don't have an intimate knowledge on this. But for example, whatever the farm laws were and things like that. So there are two sides always to the story, right? So you have to always look at two sides of the story. My approach is everything, I believe more in the Gandhian approach, which is basically, it has to be more farmer-centric. So if you're not focusing on the individual farmer and individual needs, I'll give you one example. There have been many, many laws and amendments which were already addressing the farmers' issues and things like that. So I'm not completely and intimately aware I have not kept in touch with the farm laws in India to that extent. So I don't know how to really comment on it. But as I said, philosophically, I think the small farmer needs to be protected, because at the end of the day, I feel that geography, nature, tender loving care needs to be given to the plant. It's not just you can plant something and go away. It's like a human being. It's like a baby. You have to look at it. You cannot have this big kind of a corporate concept of doing mass merchandising and mass production and things like that. I don't think farms work in that kind of a manner.
Yes, and unfortunately, that's exactly what these laws were brought out for the small farmer and for the benefit of the lowest level. And that was hijacked by these big, land farmers, and of course, some other suspect Khalistani outfits. So, I mean, there is a kind of association and which is hijacking this whole thing and not letting the small farmer grow. So that's the sad scenario which Deepanjali was addressing. Any other questions that anybody else has? Deepanjali, you have any other question?
I think, Deepanjali, the last time you asked one question on China, am I correct? As to the Chinese products and things like that, and they are very cheap, and what can India do? Am I correct, Deepanjali?
Yes.
So after we finished in our last conversation in part 1, I do want to address that question now, because I thought of it later. And I want to give you one idea. 20 years ago, Warren Buffett gave an excellent idea to the United States. And I think this is applicable for India, actually. You know what he said? He basically said, and this is not just for US, for any country in the world, he basically said that if you don't want all these products coming at a very cheap price for whatever reason into a country, let us say you have 100 exporters in India exporting 100 crores of products, right? So 100 exporters exporting 100 crores of products in India. So what the government should do is to give them a license. It is called like an import license. So all these 100 exporters get 100 crores worth of import license, but these are exporters. So what these guys do is, on a portal, on a website, they sell these licenses to whoever wants it at whatever price they want it. So at the end of the day, your trade deficit is zero. So you can only import as much as you exported, and the importer who buys these licenses for the price will only want to import what is crucial and what is necessary, because the free market will determine how much price you can sell it at. So the 100 crore import license could be sold for even 120 crores. You see what I mean? Because it's a free market. So it is a very efficient process, because the importers will only import what is necessary and what is crucial, as opposed to importing, toys and all kinds of whatever useless things, which are not even relevant.
Yes, thank you for addressing that question. It's a good idea that you mentioned for what Warren Buffett said. But you know how it is in India. I mean, you're not living in India, I presume. So in India, any good laws in India tends to get corrupted so fast. I don't know if others would agree. This idea that you mentioned about importing as much as you need and all. India, it just doesn't work many things, unfortunately. It just tends to get played by the system, which is so corrupt. So
I mean, I feel the youth of India are very much inspired. They want to change India in the right way. And I hope people like yourself come to leadership positions, not only in entrepreneurship, in business, and politics, and so on, because you're all working with a very different mindset. And I am optimistic that India is moving in the right direction. And as long as we are addressing all the right issues, we have the right frame of mind, I still feel India has the moral compass to go in the right direction.
One is you suggested lab-grown food. Have any study been conducted to determine the effects of lab-grown, which means unnatural, grown food on the human body? Firstly. Secondly, the larger question of the farmers, this you mentioned you are the Gandhian approach of the small farmer concept, wherein you look after the small farmer. In this concept, how viable is it? Because the whole world is now going on to cities as engines of growth format, where they want the land holdings to be larger, like you're in, I guess you are in the US. The larger the holding, mass production, scale of production, unit cost coming down, and that economy. So they're looking for cities as engines of growth, wherein you migrate these farmers, the small landholder, to the city, and he sells to a large landholder, and thereby you encourage economy of scale. So your ideas on that. And thirdly, just now you mentioned this import-export system that suggested by Hathway, this owner. Does the person who import have to cancel it by the exact amount of export? These three questions.
Okay. So let me address your first question, Nand. The first question is lab-grown meat and how it is impacting the human. Singapore, which is neighboring country of India, and Singapore authorities are pretty strict when it comes to how lab-grown food is impacting the human. This is the first country, their regulatory agencies are very strict, and they have looked into lab-grown meat, and they have approved it for human consumption completely. Now, second thing is, I told you about future meat technologies in Israel. Why are they building a manufacturing plant in the United States without having a complete read on how the Food and Drug Administration of the United States, they're taking a big risk, right? So which means they have done the studies, they have looked at it, and they have said, see, lab-grown meat does not mean it is unnatural. You're still growing it by natural means. In fact, future meat technologies is not using any animal serum. In fact, their lab-grown meat is completely non-GMO. So they must have tested it. Now, I have not looked into everything. Now, for reasons of timing, I have only focused on one company, just because I cannot talk about all the companies. And by the way, I'm an independent retired man who's using it independent research. I do not represent any single company. They don't know me. I don't know them. And I have not a penny invested in any of the companies I've spoken about, just to make it clear. I just feel that companies are not taking a risk without knowing nothing, number one. Number two, on the second part of your question was related to the concept of the small farmer and the unit cost and things of that nature. The large-scale chemical farming has already shown you that focusing on yield is sacrificing the levels of nutrition. Chemical farming, even the yields are actually coming down. If you have seen the recent studies, the yields are coming down in chemical-based farming. So those are the things that we need to look at broadly, more research studies and things like that. The third part of your question was on the import-export part. I think it is Warren Buffett who suggested the idea, and you can look up his idea. Basically, he's saying trade deficit for any country will be zero if your exports match your imports. And the only way to do that is to give licenses to the exports that they can sell on a web portal, and importers will buy it at whatever price the market bears. Therefore, you'll only import the products that are necessary. What it indirectly does is then it encourages entrepreneurship within the country. So I am presenting this as a policy framework kind of a challenge that the Indian government needs to look at. So hopefully, you will agree with that.